There's quite a few exciting things. And so one of the things that's interesting being here on a show like this is the Department of Defense doesn't stand by itself. And you brought that up here several times. In the session before us, we had other folks that were heavily involved in some are components of and with inside DoD. But as Shishu pointed out here, we never really had a strong relationship with the IC side of the house. We started that in full vigor about 3 or 4 years ago. And what's the common denominator there is the cost of doing business and the cybersecurity or the security of our information and our ability to share it. And that pervades across all things. How do I share my information? 20 years ago, it may have been all my logistical data was just shared between those who ordered parts and put the parts on. The medical just stayed purely inside the medical side of the house. My transportation stuff just stayed inside the building and who was shipping it. Nowadays, we have to share that information across the board. And now we're looking at it from what's the cyber threat on that? And so one of the ways that we're looking at is how do I move quickly of knowing where my data is, how is it tagged, how is it stored, what's its progeny behind it, and then two, who do I need to share it with, and then how do I secure it? And it's not necessarily in that order because security's got to be the basis of the whole thing. Along comes technology. The big buzzword of the past few years is cloud. Go to the cloud. What's DoD? It's a few million people, a whole lot of organizations, a whole lot of this is how we've been doing it since, and you can put your own dates in there. And with that comes its own governance, its own culture, its own money, and it's hard to change any of that. So suddenly along comes new technology called cloud. If we just take 1,000 ways of doing business today and move it to 1,000 different clouds, all I have is more rain. I don't have more sunshine, I just have more rain.
I like that.
And so how do I get past that thing? So part of our struggle here within DoD, is if you look at it from a whole entity, is how do I put some management in there without stifling the innovation and capitalizing on what industry is bringing to us? It took us a while to get to come to grips with that. And really with the change of leadership this past summer and the innovative breakthroughs of how do I do the risk management, the whole risk management framework that changed under NIST and now adopted across the federal space, we're now making that into practical application of how do I apply that and how do I go about buying services. Along with that, companies are coming forth and saying, hey, cybersecurity is not just one of those things that the Department of Defense is worried about or that the federal is worried about. It's in our common business life too now. So how do we partner together on this thing? So suddenly now, everybody became concerned about cybersecurity, securing my data, and storing it and getting access to it. And coupled with that is the big data analytics that go with it. How can I learn what my total cost of return on investment is? Or what is the cost of this thing that I'm buying here and using here? So we've now done 5 large pilots that we're figuring out how do I bring our data, and it's probably the higher level security required data within the Department of Defense, using commercial vendors into what I would call the private cloud provided by them, hopefully off-premise, because I can then gain efficiencies if I can work with them on how do I secure it, how do I transport it, and if I have to, because the cost changes or somebody else comes up with a better one, how do I move it from vendor A to vendor B, because I'm not going to stay wedded to the same thing. And that's the same model that's being approached there by the community outside, and that's the neat thing. We now have the power of buying together and ensuring that the security is baked into it from the very beginning.
Yeah, that's some great points there. The fact that you one of the first to bring up some of the drivers, cybersecurity being a driver, cost being a driver, but these interdependencies. I know back my days at Treasury, we once looked at how many other entities we're dependent on in order for our mission to be successful. And then when you get into cybersecurity, you realize it's the weakest link. Even if I'm doing everything I can, I'm going to be relying on a whole lot of others that I'm interconnected with to be doing what they're doing. So some great points there, and I like your cloud and rain thing. I guess you had to put up a little rain in order to get to that rainbow right there.
but I think the key to success here, though, is understand the strategy, work with the industry out there, but then do something. And it took us a while to get going. I'll tell you, it took us a while to get going. But we had to do some things, make some mistakes, and then keep on going faster. And the other way we got to figure out how to do this thing is how to partner. Just as NGA found out is, once I get past the security of how do I acquire something and put it into something, All of us can't go through that same acquisition process to get it, because there's not enough time to do that. So we got to figure out how to get the vehicles together, work with industry to get the right price for the right commodity with the right security, and then let me piggyback and use those things together so we got effective buying power too on it.
Terrific.